Chapter 301, A Chaotic Battle. Hoshino Ryoichi looked at the ninjas approaching them and commanded, "Stay together and guard Noriyuki. I'll cut down their numbers one by one." His words calmed them down. They immediately prepared for the battle, thinking, as long as we have Ryoichi, we can get our revenge. Ryoichi waved a hand sign. Lightning could be seen on his palms. He placed his palms in the river and said with utter confidence, "Face the consequences of your actions." Lightning release, lightning eels jutsu. The lightning on his palms transformed into small lightning eels and moved towards the rogue nins. However, one of the ninjas waved hand signs in response. Wind release, great breakthrough jutsu. He exhaled a strong wind current into the river. The attack hit the lightning eels head-on and dispersed them. Though the river absorbed the wind current, the winds caused a wave of water to form and move at the Kusa ninjas. The rogue ninjas used the cover provided by the wave to quickly close in the distance. Ryoichi was surprised. He thought, he countered me so easily. This isn't a random attack. Someone wants us all dead. He wanted to use another jutsu, but the ninja who used the great breakthrough jutsu suddenly appeared in front of him and attacked with his kunao. Ryoichi raised his kunao and blocked the attack. The rogue ninja smiled and said, "Sorry. I can't let you run amok, Ryoichi." At the same time, the other rogue ninjas attacked the ninjas protecting Kagawa Noriyuki with earth jutsus. Ryoichi realized it and asked, "So the IDE family has allied with Iwagakuer?" The IWA ninja smiled but didn't say anything and continued attacking. He was evenly matched with Ryoichi. Ryoichi's expression became grim. He didn't have the same confidence as before. He shouted, "We may be weak, but do you think that you can walk over Kizagakuer without any consequences?" The IWA Jounin just smirked. However, he suddenly became very serious and dived into the river. Fractions of a second later, an air bullet passed from where he was standing. He quickly looked at where the attack had come from and his eyes widened. Fujin observed the fight for a minute and jumped in at the right opportunity. He flickered next to an IWA ninja and shot a couple of dozen air bullets at the rogue ninjas. 4 IWA ninjas that were closest to him died while a few others were injured. Just like the IWA ninjas, the Kusa ninjas were also surprised. Only Noriyuki was expecting such assistance. He shouted, "They are our allies. Cooperate with them and eliminate these rogue ninjas." The Kusa ninjas were relieved. In just a minute of fighting, they realized that they were completely outmatched. With Ryoichi being held back, their hopes were dying very quickly. The IWA ninjas had solemn expressions. A few seconds ago, they were having a complete advantage. But the situation reversed instantly. Taking advantage of the slight distraction, Yojeo and Fumito snuck behind 2 of the weakest IWA ninjas. Since their attention was on Fujin and the Kusa ninjas, they didn't notice them until it was too late. In one quick stab, both killed their targets. The IWA Jounin fighting against Ryoichi was alarmed by the situation. He shouted, "Fall back to the bank and stay together." At the same time, he began withdrawing to the opposite bank, but Ryoichi immediately attacked him and didn't allow him to leave. Fujin saw the IWA ninjas retreating and activated his chakra field. His eyes widened momentarily as he looked at a location on the opposite bank. He muttered, "This will be a tough fight." As the IWA ninjas were retreating, they approached Bunjiro, who was hiding under the water. He immediately took advantage. Water release, water shuriken jutsu. Dozens of water shurikens formed underwater and launched at the IWA nins. One of Iwa's Jounins immediately noticed it and made a hand seal. Water release, water wall jutsu. A layer of water appeared in front and under the IWA ninjas in the nick of time. Unfortunately, Bunjiro wasn't their only opponent. Fujin flickered next to them and a sword appeared in his hand. One of the IWA ninjas noticed him and immediately attacked him with his kunao. Fujin swung his sword at the kunao. The remaining IWA ninjas focused on Yujeo, Fumito, and the Kusa ninjas. But, they turned their attention to Fujin once again. They watched in shock as the headless corpse of their comrade fell into the river. One of the IWA ninjas muttered, "How can that be? He killed a Jounin in the blink of an eye." Fujin continued his attack and swung his sword at the nearest IWA ninja. However, he stopped and moved backwards. An earth spear passed by from the space he was at a moment ago. Fujin turned his head to the left to see hundreds of earth spikes extending from the opposite bank to their location. Fujin thought, they couldn't hold back anymore. I guess that is to be expected considering the losses they were taking. The hundreds of earth spears forced the Konoha and Kusa ninjas back. Even Bunjiro was attacked underwater and forced to retreat. The IWA ninjas immediately took the opportunity to retreat to the opposite bank. Apart from Fujin, everyone's expressions became solemn. The attack was just too large in scale. The chaotic battle finally stopped as the three sides reassessed the situation. On the bank where Mizukoshi town was, Ide Tomoki stopped his ninjas and instructed, "There is another group there. It looks like the Kagawa family was expecting this attack. We will wait and observe the situation for now." His ninjas immediately agreed. In a short while, they had seen 7 capable ninjas fall. In addition, they could see the fearsome earth spears extending from the opposite bank to the center of the river. None of them wanted to risk their lives needlessly. Meanwhile, Tomoki frowned and thought, as I guessed, Noriyuki came prepared. These should be Konoha Umbu. Fortunately, I contacted Iwagakuer. Otherwise, I'd be dead. Fujin observed the situation. On one side of the river were ninjas of the IDE family. On the other side were 21 IWA ninjas. While on the river, there were 15 ninjas from the Kagawa family and Fujin's team. Fujin observed the ninja who launched the earth spears and thought, an elite Jounin. I have been running into way too many of them in recent times. Oh well, now that everyone is out of hiding, I can kill them in one single fight. If Fujin wanted to, he could have killed another 3 to 4 IWA ninjas. But he refrained from doing so as he wanted to use them to draw them out. Due to this, any traps that they might have set up would be useless. The ninja, at whom Fujin was staring, looked at the IWA ninjas who retreated and asked, "Shiharu, are you fine?" Shiharu nodded and said, "Yes, but 7 of our ninjas died. The Kusa ninjas have Ryoichi among their ranks. But Jin, be careful of that Konoha Umbu with the sword. For some reason, he is giving me a very bad feeling." Jin looked at Fujin and said, "It doesn't matter, they will all die today." There wasn't a single shred of doubt in his voice. While Jin was checking on the IWA ninjas, Noriyuki analyzed, even though Tomoki wants us out of the way, he can't attack us openly. So we have 2 options. We can withdraw into Mizukoshi and force them to fight with us. Then these ninjas will withdraw. But this option is very risky. The second option is to fight the IWA ninjas and break through into the interior parts of the country. They won't chase me too deep into the land of the grass. While he was debating internally, Fujin flickered next to Ryoichi and Noriyuki and said, "Ryoichi, your lightning nature will give you an advantage against that guy. Hold him back. I'll eliminate the others. Ryoichi frowned and said, that is very risky. With his ability, sneak attacking Noriyuki will be very easy. The scale of earth spears that was launched was just too big. Despite being far from the land, they were still threatened by that attack. However, Noriyuki said, no, that is the only way. Going back to Mizukoshi will be very risky and we all may be wiped out. You hold him back. Konoha ninjas can focus on eliminating the rest. And when the fighting is intense, I'll escape with 4 ninjas protecting me so that I won't hold you back anymore. Ryoichi asked, what if there are more Iwagakure ninjas hiding? Noriyuki let out a sigh and said, it's unlikely that Iwagakure will send so many ninjas here just for me. But if they have, then it is only a matter of time before they kill me. After all, that group is already stronger than us. Just escape and ensure that you stay alive. If possible, please see that no harm befalls my family. Ryoichi didn't want to agree. Unfortunately, he couldn't see any other option. Meanwhile, Fujin was surprised. He looked at Noriyuki and thought, that's a surprise. Most of those in power, even if they are just, won't risk their own lives to help others escape. I guess this is why Hiruzen and Chikako valued him highly. Fujin said, don't worry. I don't sense anyone else. But be careful regardless. Noriyuki nodded. They stopped talking at the same time as Jin. Jin rapidly weaved hand signs and slammed his palms on the ground. Earth Release, Earth Spike Hell Jutsu. Chapter 302, The Battle on the River Bank. Earth Release, Earth Spike Hell Jutsu. The Kusa ninjas were surprised by the massive chakra emanating from Jin. On the riverbed, thousands of small sharp spikes began forming. Fujin sensed the change and shouted, leave the river immediately. Fujin flickered right away. So did his team. The Kusa ninjas were slightly slower to react as Fujin wasn't their superior and they didn't feel the change happening under their feet. However, when Noriyuki and Ryoichi began moving, they immediately followed. In a second, the spikes were launched. They tore through the strong river current and propelled skyward. 3 Kusachinins were a bit slow to move. The spikes pierced into their feet and drilled through their bodies, shattering their bones and puncturing their internal organs. They emerged from heads and shoulders and soared into the sky, tracing a vivid arc of red blood. The 3 Chinins died without even understanding how they were hit from below the river. The ninjas from the IDE family saw in horror as blood spouted from their bodies as they fell into the river and dyed it red color momentarily. The scene was hellish. They thanked their lucky stars that their leader asked them to stay away. As soon as Fujin stepped on the river bank, he felt the ground under his feet transforming into small spikes. He immediately flickered while thinking, this is annoying. Even my team might not stay safe for long from such a barrage. Fujin flickered continuously while building his chakra up. Jin tried attacking him and the places he might appear in, but Fujin was too fast and unpredictable for him and maintained a sufficient distance from the remaining IWA ninjas. Wind Release, Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. Jin was surprised. He thought, he is good. A sealless supercharged jutsu. However, he didn't react. Instead, a ninja next to him slammed his palms on the ground. Earth Release, Earth Wall Jutsu. A gigantic earth wall appeared instantly and protected the IWA ninjas. At the same time, Jin changed his target from Fujin to the Kusa ninjas, thinking, the Konoha Umbu are quite strong. It should be an elite unit. I'll whittle down the Kusa numbers first and then use the numerical advantage to crush them. The Kusa ninjas had seen Fujin dodging at a fast pace. They began imitating his movements and didn't stand in the same spot for long. Jin sensed their movements and smirked while thinking, I couldn't hit him due to his speed. Do you think that you can replicate the same speed? Jin predicted where they would dodge and preemptively began creating spikes on those spots. This immediately created more pressure on the Kusa ninjas as the number of times they had to dodge increased by 2 to 3 times. Meanwhile, Fujin looked at the wall and decided, time to cut down their numbers. Wind release, vacuum serial wave jutsu. Fujin exhaled blades of wind at several angles. Behind the giant wall, the IWA ninjas were feeling quite safe when the blades cut through the wall like a hot knife through butter, catching them completely off guard. Jin, who had already neutralized another Kusa ninja and injured a couple more and managed to keep the Kusa ninjas and Fujin's team at bay, was shocked. He immediately jumped up to dodge the wind blade heading towards him. Jin's eyes widened as he realized the power behind the wind blades. He wondered, wind vacuum technique? Who is this guy? Wait, if he knows wind vacuum technique, then... shit. Jin immediately created an earth clone. The experienced IWA ninjas also reacted instinctively. However, 8 IWA ninjas couldn't react in time. They were cut into 2 and died on the spot. Jin watched as his eyes turned red. He had lost 15 ninjas on such a simple mission. The losses had now exceeded the acceptable limit. However, before he could even think of retaliating, Fujin fired vacuum bullets at the ninjas who had jumped in the air to dodge. 2 bullets were heading at Jin. Jin looked at the incoming attack and thought, as I had expected. The earth clone he created seconds ago pushed him away as the vacuum bullets pierced it and dispelled it. Jin barely managed to dodge the attack. However, not everyone could do the same. Another 2 IWA ninjas were killed. Fujin observed the situation and analyzed, these ninjas are all elites. I had targeted 6 but only 2 died. They are much stronger than the Suna bunch that tried to hunt me. Looks like Oniki greatly values this mission. Is IWA that desperate to make inroads into grass or waterfall? IDE Tomoki saw Fujin's counterattack and gulped in fear. He was no longer confident in Iwa's victory. He decided, if IWA fails to kill Noriyuki, I will distance myself from them and claim that this attack had nothing to do with me. After all, I doubt IWA would claim these ninjas as their own and hence won't antagonize the only noble in the land of grass that supports them. Fujin's consecutive attacks finally gave his allies time to catch their breath. He also changed the numerical advantage in their favor. Yojeo, Fumito, and Bunjiro immediately went on the attack. Ryoichi remembered Fujin's words and immediately rushed towards Jin. He realized, Konoha Umbu Captain is right. If I don't restrict him, it's only a matter of time before the remaining Kusa ninjas are killed. Only I and the Konoha Umbu might be able to escape. The remaining Kusa ninjas split into 2. 4 stayed next to Noriyuki while the rest followed Ryoichi. Ryoichi weaved hand signs while running and supercharged his jutsu. Lightning release, false darkness jutsu. He extended his arms towards Jin as bolts of lightning crackled on his arms. He discharged all the lightning bolts at Jin. Jin saw the lightning bolts with a frown on his face as he thought, lightning is the biggest weakness of earth jutsus. Back in the Third Great Ninja War, he gained fame against us because his unit encountered a division that was exclusively made of Earth Affinity ninjas and didn't have any strong jounin. Despite the frown, Jin wasn't worried about Ryoichi. Instead, his attention was on Fujin. The threat of wind vacuum jutsus far exceeded lightning in his eyes. Shiharu appeared in front of Jin. After knowing that Ryoichi was with the Kagawa family entourage, Jin had specifically requested Shiharu to join this mission to counter his lightning jutsus. Even though Jin could still deal with Ryoichi, it would be very annoying and would allow Fujin to run amok. Wind Release, Great Breakthrough Jutsu. Shiharu confronted Ryoichi with a supercharged jutsu as well. Both jutsu clashed. Ryoichi frowned and stopped. Despite the power of the jutsus being the same, he was at a disadvantage. The winds neutralized his lightning bolts one after another. However, Fujin flickered next to Ryoichi. Fire Release, Searing Migraine Jutsu. Taking advantage of the winds, Fujin exhaled a massive fire at Shiharu. Shiharu's eyes widened as he cursed, "Shit. He also knows fire jutsus." Jin also became serious. He was waiting to find an opportunity against Fujin. Instead, it was Fujin who seized the opportunity. He gathered chakra and slammed his hands on the ground. Another gigantic wall appeared out of the ground. It was tall and wide enough to keep the massive firestorm on the other side temporarily. However, Jin shouted, "Move away from the walls." Every IWA ninja followed his instruction without any hesitation. A second later, blades of wind cut through the gigantic wall with ease. Fortunately, the IWA ninjas were far enough to have the time to dodge them. Jin observed the blades with an annoyed expression. He thought, "Fortunately my sensei had informed me about Shimura Danzo's skills. Otherwise, the death toll would keep piling." Still, wind vacuum technique and such ruthlessness. Is he Danzo's successor? If so, he can't be allowed to live any longer. Who knows how many of our sufferings had that bastard's hand in the shadows. If another shinobi of darkness appears in Konoha, then we will suffer for a few more decades. Kagawa Noriyuki noticed the destruction and thought, "I O Lord Hokage won." He instructed, "Let's escape." Chapter 303, Breaking Through Iwa's Obstruction. Taking opportunity of the situation, Noriyuki, along with 4 jounins, began escaping. Jin sensed it and muttered, "Do you think it'd be this easy to escape from me?" He waved hand signs and slammed his hands on the ground once again. Despite the large distance between them, the ground under the feet of Noriyuki's group turned into a swamp. They immediately jumped backwards. However, several mud balls were launched at them from the swamp. One of the Kusa ninjas waved hand signs. Water Release, Water Wall Jutsu. A water wall appeared in front of them and stopped the mud balls. However, soon the land to the right of them began moving. A second later, a large, bronze dragon head popped out of the ground. It opened its mouth and shot multiple cannonballs made of mud at the group. The Kusa ninjas hurriedly dodged while the dragon head dived underground once again. One of the Kusa ninjas shouted, "Be careful. It will attack us from below and blow itself up." His words alarmed Noriyuki and the rest. They stayed on their toes and tried attacking the dragon underground in order to make it explode deep underground. However, several spikes and needles were launched at them, forcing them to keep evading and cutting off their escape routes. Fujin sensed the attack and thought, "Such a large range. But, why hasn't he ordered a retreat? Their losses are already too high and this situation is very disadvantageous and dangerous for him." Though he and Ryoichi tried to stop him, they were outnumbered. When Fujin used any vacuum attack, Jin would move away and then place his palms on the ground once again. Finally, the remaining Kusa and Konoha ninjas made their way across the fire and debris and joined the battle. Ryoichi instructed, "Keep their weaker ninjas busy. We will eliminate their leaders." The Kusa ninjas immediately obeyed his command. As for Fujin's team, They had already attacked. With their aid, the number advantage was evened out. Fujin flickered towards Shiharu while Ryoichi confronted Jin. Jin confronted Ryoichi while observing the battlefield. He analyzed, despite the enemy reinforcements, we still had one more ninja. 5 ninjas are equally matched while we have the advantage in 3 fights. But, though it looked like they had the overall advantage, Jin was worried. Shiharu couldn't match up to Fujin at all. He barely hung on. Jin sighed, I can't afford to take any more pointless losses. If I knew that someone as ferocious as he would be protecting Noriyuki, then I would have redone our entire strategy. I didn't want to resort to this, but we don't have any other option now. I can only use my final card. Though this could put my village in some trouble, it's better than just retreating with nothing but losses. Within half a minute of confrontation, Fujin had gained the absolute advantage. He was about to deal the final blow when he suddenly jumped away. Numerous earth spikes assaulted his previous position. He looked at Jin. Jin gritted his teeth and cursed, fine. I'll let Kagawa Noriyuki go. But you all will stay here. He stopped attacking Noriyuki's group and focused entirely on the existing battlefield. Immediately, Fujin and a few other ninjas were assaulted by spikes, needles, spears, and other weapon-shaped projectiles from the ground. Apart from Fujin, everyone fell at a disadvantage. Ryoichi tried his best to stop him but had no success. A frown appeared on Fujin's face as he analyzed, something is off. Though the move is tactical, he should have done this long ago. And even now he isn't retreating. It's as if he is assured of his victory. Fujin had a bad feeling. Immediately, a massive amount of chakra was released by Fujin. Jin was alarmed as winds began flowing around Fujin. Suddenly, vast amounts of wind were blasted behind Fujin. An IWA ninja, who was confronting Fumito, was hit by this blast wave and lost his balance and fell towards Fumito. Fumito immediately took advantage of the opening and jabbed his tanto into his throat. Meanwhile, Fujin disappeared from his spot and appeared behind the ninja fighting with Yojeo. Before the IWA ninja could even react, he was beheaded. Yojeo watched with shock in her eyes. She thought, I couldn't see him at all. However, the one who was the most shocked was Jin. He was maintaining control over the entire battlefield. But 2 more of his subordinates died. He immediately concentrated on Fujin and launched multiple jutsus. However, Fujin once again disappeared and appeared behind the ninja fighting Bunjiro and killed him as well. Before Jin could react, Fujin disappeared once again and appeared behind Shiharu. Shiharu immediately turned around and swung his kunao at Fujin. Though he wasn't very skilled at it, chakra could be seen flowing through his kunao. However, instead of attacking with his sword, Fujin just shot a vacuum bullet at point-blank range. Shiharu had no chance of dodging it. The bullet pierced through his forehead, leaving a huge hole in his head. He dropped dead as well. Jin was enraged at that sight. He shouted, "Bastard! Stop running and fight me." He launched more spikes at Ryoichi and forced him back while he rushed at Fujin. Winds blasted behind Fujin once again as he appeared in front of Jin in the blink of an eye. Jin saw Fujin swinging his sword at him. He only had one thought, shit. Jin's body turned black as he tried to grab Fujin's sword with his right hand. His right hand was even blacker than the rest of his body. Fujin's sword hit his right hand. Though the iron skin jutsu was strong, it was no match for a sword enhanced by wind nature chakra flow. In addition, Fujin was also assisted by his massive momentum. The sword cut his right palm open. It cut through his right forearm. Jin gritted his teeth and endured the pain and managed to just get his body out of the way of Fujin's sword. However, he had to pay an extremely high price. Jin's right hand was cut off. Half of his right forearm was cut off vertically. What remained just bled and hurt like hell. Jin looked at Fujin with hatred in his eyes. Though Jin and Fujin were quite evenly matched, their strengths lay in different areas. Fujin excelled at close-range fighting and had numerous jutsus to make him lethal at mid-range and long-range. Meanwhile, Jin was better than Fujin at controlling the battlefield and fighting while keeping his enemies at bay. Though his close-range skills were nothing to scoff at, he wasn't comparable to Fujin. Under normal circumstances, he would maintain his distance and keep Fujin away. Such a battle would only result in a draw. That is why both Fujin and Jin tried to target the weaker enemies to gain a numerical advantage while distracting the other. Fujin gained an advantage in that aspect. He didn't care about the losses Kusa suffered, and he had killed far more IWA ninjas than the damage Jin managed to inflict on Kusa ninjas. This caused Jin to make a mistake and end up confronting Fujin head-on. Since Jin had stopped targeting them, Noriyuki and the 4 jounins with him left the banks and began running towards the interior. Noriyuki said, "We will run full time till we reach back to our town. Once we reach there, Iwagakure won't dare to attack us. We will lodge a complaint with Lord Daimyo and make Iwa pay dearly." The jounins nodded. They ran a couple hundred meters without any obstruction. Since none of the IWA ninjas chased them, one jounin said, "Looks like your plan has worked. The IWA ninjas can't spare anyone to chase after us." They were relieved. Noriyuki nodded and said, "Yes, but stay on guard. We can't afford any more loss." Noriyuki's words were stuck in his mouth as he felt extremely high heat on his right side. He and the jounins turned around to see. A look of shock and terror appeared on their faces. A massive rock covered in lava was heading straight at them. They wanted to get out of the way. Unfortunately, it was too late. Before their feet could move, the massive lava-covered rock hit them. It crushed the 5 ninjas under its immense weight while burning them and exploded almost immediately. Chapter 304, Attacking Indiscriminately. Seeing Fujin attacking him again, Jin retreated. Fujin was about to give chase when the loud explosion sound was heard, attracting everyone's attention. Seconds later, dust and smoke covered the entire area. Some debris also fell. The IWA ninjas took the chance to retreat and regroup as the sensors on Fujin's side were shocked. Fujin looked towards the spot of the explosion and thought, the chakra of all 5 of them disappeared. And what's with that massive chakra? Even Hiruzen's chakra wasn't as high as this. Though Fujin's first mission as the Umbu captain had failed, he had no time to think about it. He was more concerned about the chakra that the ambusher was emitting. Jin looked at the destruction and sighed, "We had to resort to this. Now everyone will know that it was Iwagakure who did the attack. This will be a diplomatic disaster." He turned his attention towards his bleeding arm. His expression became determined as he thought, "But that's fine. Though we will lose our influence in the land of grass, we found out about this fearsome Umbu from Konoha. I don't recall any powerhouse in Konoha having such skills. So he should be someone who they raised after the last Great War ended. Killing him will be far more beneficial." Suddenly, Jin's eyes widened and he looked in front only to see a sword heading straight at him. He instinctively moved backwards but knew that he had no chance of avoiding the attack. Having sensed a formidable foe, Fujin didn't want to leave any other trouble behind him. Fujin's blade was just a few inches away from Jin's neck when he sensed molten rocks headed towards him. Fujin flickered backwards and fired a few vacuum bullets at Jin. Jin barely managed to dodge them. They created a few cuts on his body, causing him to lose even more blood, but none were fatal. However, Fujin had no time to look at him. A figure rushed towards him at rapid speed. Fujin shot a few vacuum bullets, but he dodged them all. His fist began glowing red as he punched Fujin. Chakra began flowing along Fujin's sword as he slashed at the incoming punch. The sword and the fist clashed, creating a slight shockwave. Fujin's expression behind his mask became serious as his sword couldn't cut into the fist. The punch sent him flying backwards. He flipped in the air and landed back on the ground, but was still dragged behind for a few minutes. His eyes landed on the ninja who attacked him. He had red hair, mustache, and beard. Unlike the other IWA ninjas, he didn't bother hiding his identity. He wore a large headpiece that proudly displayed the symbol of Iwagakure. On seeing his face, Ryoichi and the other Kusa ninjas were horrified. Even Fujin's team raised their guard to the max. Ryoichi asked in disbelief and horror, "Rashi, why did Iwagakure send someone like you?" Rashi ignored his question and looked at Fujin. He said, "Youngsters these days are getting even more ferocious. You forced me to take action." Fujin cursed in his mind, "Shit. If I knew someone like him was hiding here, I wouldn't have wasted time dealing with the rest. Though if I did that, he might have jumped in sooner. But why the hell is Oniki sending his Jinchuriki on a mission? It's an absolute taboo during peacetime. Even their own citizens don't trust them, let alone citizens of other countries." Fujin roared, "Iwagakure! You dare send your Jinchuriki to the land of grass? Do you intend to start a war?" Fujin used his chakra to amplify his voice. It was so loud that everyone in Mizukoshi heard it clearly. Though most didn't know what a Jinchuriki was, knowing that the ambushers weren't rogue ninjas and instead were from Iwagakure terrified them. As for the ones who knew what a Jinchuriki was, their fear knew no bounds. Panic spread through the city. Some hid in underground safe houses in the city. A few began escaping from the city. Some officials sent messenger birds to Kusagakure without consulting or even informing Ide Tomoki. Rashi realized Fujin's intention and said, "I'm surprised that you are still thinking about diplomacy at this point." Fujin ignored him and instructed, "Slaughter the rest. I'll deal with Rashi." His earlier rampage had killed 4 more IWA ninjas, including Shiharu, who was the second most powerful in that group and could restrict Ryoichi. More importantly, he had gravely injured Jin. Iwagakure only had 6 ninjas along with an injured Jin. So the Umbu and Kusa ninjas shouldn't have any issue in dealing with them. Rashi asked, "You think you can do?" His words were cut short as Fujin flickered next to him and shot air bullets from a close range. Rashi immediately dodged and counterattacked. Lava release, scorching rocks jutsu. Rashi expelled a large amount of lava that solidified into molten rocks. They traveled towards Fujin with tremendous force. Fujin ran straight towards the incoming molten rocks. Displaying blinding speed, he avoided all molten rocks. The molten rocks hit his afterimages and exploded on contacting the ground. Rashi's eyes widened. He muttered, "So fast." He slammed his hand on the ground. Lava release, volcanic swamp jutsu. The ground around him began turning into a swamp that had lava mixed within it. He severely restricted Fujin's movements if he wanted to close the distance. However, instead of approaching him, Fujin jumped a long distance in the sky while building a large amount of chakra and inhaling a large amount of air. Wind release, infinite breakthrough jutsu. Rashi began preparing a fire jutsu to take advantage of the wind jutsu but stopped midway as his eyes widened in surprise. He thought, what is he doing? Ryoichi had just begun fighting Jin when they both stopped and looked above. Ryoichi's eyes widened. Even Yujeo, Fumito, and Bunjiro were surprised and scared. A second later, a strong wind current engulfed the entire battlefield. Enemies and allies both felt the tremendous wind flow. Even the IDE family ninjas on the opposite bank felt the massive wind current. The winds caused the river water to flood the opposite bank. They immediately retreated back into Mizukoshi and activated their protective seals. Layers of lava walls formed around Rashi, protecting him from the winds. Several wind blades hit it every second, causing it to crumble. But it reformed itself at an even faster pace. He thought, though my fire nature should have an advantage, the winds are so strong that everything will be reflected back to me. But, what is he planning? Does he want to kill his own allies as well? Since when did Konoha become so ruthless? At the same time, Jin was horrified. He thought, this bastard is definitely Danzo's successor. He'd kill his allies as well rather than letting any of us escape. A similar fear ran through the minds of the Kusa ninjas. After all, they had no idea who Fujin was and what his intentions were. Even Yujeo, Fumito, and Bunjiro had solemn expressions. Even though they were his subordinates, none of them had worked with him earlier or knew what missions he undertook. Suddenly, the IWA ninjas in front of them were attacked by wind blades. Long cuts appeared on their bodies. The IWA ninjas dodged while the Kusa and Konoha ninjas were afraid that they too would suffer the same fate. But they soon noticed something odd. They realized, the wind blades are only attacking the IWA ninjas. Though we are facing the extreme winds as well, they don't pose much threat to us. Rashi noticed it as well. His eyes widened and pupils dilated. He realized, this level of control. His control over yin-yang should be excellent. This isn't a blind attack. He can perfectly control his jutsu. He wants to kill all IWA ninjas so that they won't interfere with our fight. Realizing that they were safe, the Kusa and Konoha ninjas began attacking IWA ninjas. The IWA ninjas immediately fell into peril. A red coating of chakra appeared around Rashi as he rapidly weaved hand signs. Chakra and lava gathered on his right fist as he punched the ground with full force. Immediately, the lava and chakra were released into the swamps he created earlier. The ground around him raised 10 meters in height, forming a miniature volcano. The lava began gathering towards its mouth. Lava release, flower fruit mountain jutsu. The miniature volcano exploded with a loud sound. It sent a shockwave in the surrounding area, nullifying the winds Fujin had created. Following the shockwave, a large amount of molten rocks was launched into the air. However, since the IWA ninjas were also in the vicinity, Rashi controlled it to fall far away from the battlefield. One of the molten rocks fell on Mizukoshi town. It hit the protective barrier and broke it with ease. Fortunately, it hit the wall and didn't fall in the town. The wall crumbled in an instant. The people who still hadn't hidden underground were horrified by the sight. Chapter 305, Contemplating the Situation. Rashi gathered chakra once again and shouted, "Retreat!" Lava release, fiery rock bullet jutsu. He spat a single rock made of molten lava at Fujin, who was falling down from the sky. Fujin gathered chakra as well. Wind release, vacuum cannon jutsu. The vacuum cannon hit the lava rock and broke through it and traveled towards Rashi. Rashi didn't dare test his defenses against the wind vacuum attacks. He immediately dodged. The vacuum cannon hit the miniature volcano Rashi built earlier and crumbled it down. Fujin wasn't sure whether Rashi could use the same jutsu through it. He didn't want to see whether he could or not. He landed on the ground and instructed, "Chase and kill them off." The IWA ninjas had already begun escaping. Fujin's allies were wondering whether they should aid him or chase the IWA ninjas. Hearing his command, most of them began chasing the IWA ninjas. Seeing what Rashi could do, none of them wanted to face him. Only Ryoichi and Yujeo stayed behind. Yujeo looked at Fujin and recalled the words Hiruzen had said to her before she joined Fujin's team. She analyzed, if he kills Iwa's Jinchuriki, then it could cause a war between Konoha and IWA. The best solution is to disengage now and let them retreat. But how do I tell him that? And what would be the optimal route if that Jinchuriki decides to keep chasing after us? Ryoichi had similar thoughts. Konoha could afford to offend IWA, but they couldn't. He said, "Kagawa Noriyuki is already dead. Let's stop here and leave." Fujin and Rashi were about to begin their battle but halted on hearing that. A frown appeared behind Fujin's mask. He pointed at Rashi and said, "Tell him that." Rashi thought for a few seconds and replied, "Sure. Kusa ninjas can leave but Konoha will have to pay for killing so many of our ninjas." Ryoichi was stunned by his words. He immediately fell into a dilemma. If he escaped, then the remaining Kusa ninjas would live. If he stayed and Fujin lost, then they could all be wiped out. A frown formed on Yujeo's face as she stared at Ryoichi. Fujin didn't say anything. He decided that if Ryoichi withdrew, he would run away as well. And after he gets away from Rashi, he would hunt them down and pin the blame on IWA. After all, an entire town had seen them fighting IWA ninjas. Ryoichi let out a sigh and said, "Then I have no choice but to continue fighting." He immediately left and began chasing the escaping IWA ninjas while thinking, though we can't afford to offend IWA, they are the ones who attacked us in our country. If I escape, then we will offend Konoha while IWA would think that they can bully us whenever they want to. In that scenario, our country will be doomed. Rashi frowned and was about to flicker towards Ryoichi when Fujin suddenly appeared in front of him and swung his sword at him. Rashi dodged and attacked back. Both began fighting. Though Yujeo wanted to retreat, seeing Rashi's unyielding attitude, she understood that there was no other option. She shouted, "Captain, don't forget our mission," and left to chase the IWA ninjas. Fujin wondered, "What mission? The one we are supposed to protect is already dead." Meanwhile, Rashi also wondered, did they come here using Kagawa as a front to do a secret mission? But what mission could have a higher importance than guarding Kagawa Noriyuki? They entered into an intense conflict. However, both had thoughts running through their minds. The longer they fought, the more depressed Rashi became. He thought, though I have stopped paying attention to the internal situation in IWA, I still know that the old man hasn't found any successor for him. For decades, no one who can replace Onaki has appeared in IWA. Only me and Han came close, but we were asked to take control of the tailed beasts. But Konoha? They had White Fang who dominated the Second Great Ninja War. He was followed by the Sunnins who gained fame in the Second War and dominated the Third War. And while they were still at their peak, Namikaze Minato rose to fame and took command of their forces. Even though they suffered numerous losses after the Third Great Ninja War, their next generation is already stepping up. First copy ninja and now this guy. Though he isn't as strong as me, his speed exceeds mine. And his attacks are all very deadly. Even if I get hit by just one, I'll be gravely injured or dead. At the same time, Fujin was seriously introspecting, should I kill him or just stall? He analyzed, if I kill him now, the Four Tails will die as well and will need a few years to resurrect. If I can capture and seal it inside me and become a perfect Jinchuriki, then my prowess will increase many folds. But Fujin flickered to his right to dodge the wave of lava heading at him. Rashi launched another round of molten rocks at Fujin which he dodged as well while counter-attacking. He further analyzed, but by the time the Four Tails is resurrected, Akatsuki would have begun capturing tailed beasts. The place of resurrection will be random. And there is no way I could compete with Akatsuki in intel gathering. Unless I can build the organization in time. But, that's still incredibly tough. Not to mention, there is no way anyone can compete with Zetsu in terms of gathering information. Besides, even if I have great luck and manage to become a Jinchuriki, I will have very little time to become a perfect one. After all, creating friendship and a deep enough bond will be very difficult after I beat him up and seal him inside me. Fujin let out a sigh and thought, leave it. I'm not ready yet. Killing him now could result in a conflict with IWA. It could change the course of future events. Not to mention, I doubt I could kill him unless he becomes very careless for some reason. If he transforms, then the only way I can confront him is by summoning Ryu. But that will exhaust all my chakra and I doubt Ryu can win against Son Goku. Still, this is a good opportunity to test my skills. Fujin's expression suddenly became very serious. Though his face was hidden by the turtle mask, Rashi felt the change in his attitude. Fujin suddenly disappeared and appeared behind Rashi and swung his sword vertically. Rashi immediately moved to his left. A sword slash passed by leaving a deep scar on the ground. Suddenly, several cuts appeared on his arm despite dodging the attack. Rashi's eyes widened as he flickered away. He realized, in addition to the main slash, there were hundreds of smaller slashes surrounding it. Fujin followed Rashi and swung his sword 6 times in quick succession. 6 razor-sharp sword slashes streaked towards Rashi with blinding speed. Rashi's eyes widened as he thought, if these also have the additional slashes, then... He moved his body such that he would narrowly dodge all the sword slashes. At the same time, one tail appeared behind him and red chakra appeared on his body. Before the sword slashes reached him, a coating of lava enveloped his entire body. The sword slashes narrowly missed his body while the accompanying winds hit his lava armor. Numerous cuts appeared on his armor but none reached his flesh. Fujin thought, a lava armor? That's interesting. He immediately shot a vacuum bullet at his heart. Rashi immediately dodged. Though the armor could stop weaker attacks, it wouldn't stand any chance against attacks with high penetrating power. Fujin observed, I see. Its defense shouldn't be very high. At least he isn't confident of blocking my vacuum jutsus. Lava release, fiery rock bullet jutsu. Rashi shot 3 lava boulders at Fujin. Fujin dodged them but Rashi used the distraction to reduce the distance between them. He appeared at Fujin's right, jumped above and sent a punch towards his head. Knowing that his sword won't be cut through Rashi's fist from the previous exchange, Fujin moved backwards. Rashi's punch hit the ground causing cracks to appear in the ground. One such crack extended towards Fujin while emitting red light and a lot of heat. Fujin immediately got out of the way. Lava erupted out of that crack. At the same time, Fujin's clothes caught on fire. Fujin was shocked. Rashi used this distraction to once again appear in front of Fujin. Fujin looked at Rashi's grin and wondered, when did he burn my clothes? Rashi sent a punch at Fujin once again. Fujin slashed at his lava-covered fist with his sword again as he realized, I see. The heat from his armor is so intense that my clothes caught on fire despite not being touched by him. Just when the fist and sword were about to clash, Rashi opened his fist and caught the sword. The sword cut a couple of inches into his palm but couldn't cut any more due to the highly concentrated chakra flowing through his arm. Rashi held the sword tightly as he raised his left fist to pummel Fujin to death. However, before he could punch Fujin, a punch landed on his abdomen and sent him